Well, hello, shorties. Welcome, welcome. My name is Miss Shorty, also known as Lisa. Can you hear me? Give me something. One's in the chat if you can hear me. I know there's a delay, so I'll wait. Before you hit me with a yes, we can hear you, Lisa, Shorty. I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you to my amazing uh, lead moderator, Sarah. Thank you for everything you do with your organizing. I know you're super busy. We're all super busy, but I really truly appreciate that you manage the mod squad on my behalf. Thanks, Nick. One's in the chat. Woo! Thank you to also Nick, one of my other very good friend and one of my other moderators. Adam Drives Helen, newest team addition. Thank you for being here. Oh, Helen, thank you so much. And before I forget, thank you, Chris 6A, for your super sticker. Really appreciate that. And B, Chris contacted me after, or possibly even during, the last show where we had some echo issues to try and help me troubleshoot it. After the show last week, Frank and Jim and I stayed backstage and tried to see whether we could work out what was wrong. We did a bit of experimenting with like the StreamYard equivalent of plug it in, plug it out, pull it out, turn it off and on. Basically, we think we've worked out the problem. We've also test run it earlier today and then just now. So I'm hoping let's all send positive, no echo, no robot vibes into the ether and see what we can do to make sure we've got none of that going on, because nobody needs that in their life. So make sure you touch, stroke the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and after the stream, if you could, I would love for you to drop a comment in the comments box. So not this chat, but the stream, once it's no longer a live stream. That really helps get this video, once it's a video, out into the Facebook, probably the YouTube algorithm. And that means that, because this kind of subject matter, this content, isn't necessarily something that YouTube will promote because it's not, bright and sparkly. So, but it's very important. So yes. Sorry, just got a message. Notifications off now. And so we are going to be tonight embarking on episode 3 of the Boulder syndrome with brothers Frank and Jim Zell, who we've all come to know and love. Their knowledge, their commitment, their drive, their dedication, their obsession to initially the JonBenét Ramsey murder, which I guess we're all familiar with. But then very quickly it became apparent to them that to discover or to crack the case, if that's a thing, in this case, it was no use really looking at the information, the evidence, the red herrings that happened inside that house back in Boulder, Colorado in 1996, Christmas night, but to actually look at the Boulder area and what was going on there in the years leading up to and during and after the murder of JonBenét Ramsey. So, oh, look, here for the Zells, sent by Nikki. Thank you, Nikki. She's sending a bunch of people our way. Thank you for coming. I really love having you here. There is a part 1 and part 2 of this series. We're up to episode 3. Don't go watch it now. Stay in the live. But if you would like to get a good foundation of what we're talking about here, those 2 episodes really will help you out. They're in a playlist, the Boulder Syndrome, JonBenét Ramsey, on my channel. So do that. So today we have got, I think Frank last week read the 2 poems that fell into the Zell brothers' hands, that were penned by someone who clearly has direct knowledge of what happened both with JonBenét Ramsey and her brutal murder, but also in Boulder in general, all of the tie-ins. So today we're going to, hey Dusty, good to see you. It's been a long time. We're going to go through those 2 poems and break them down and analyze them. And there was just a little bit of a kerfuffle backstage. Jim likes to call it a roadmap. Frank, not so much. So we could have some like twin brother biffo. Pretty cool. No, we're not. If you would like to, Sarah, or I think Sarah has the links to, if you have Twitter, X, Frank had in the past tweeted the two poems. One is called The Manchurian Doll, and the other one is called The Three Men. I've also put screenshots of those poems in the community tab of my channel. And so if you are able to, if you've got more than one screen and you can, or you've got YouTube Premium, you can X out of the chat and have a look at those in writing if you're a visual learner. I had hoped to be able to have those documents up on screen. I have a MacBook coming, so soon I can be even more of a proper YouTuber, a known YouTuber, and have screen sharing on my screen. However, the MacBook didn't arrive yet, so here we are, still doing this. That was a long introduction. Without further ado, shall we bring up the people we are waiting for? Very happy to see. Oh, guys, guess what? It's not. We're not going to see their faces because these two gentlemen absolutely value and require anonymity. So we're not going to see their faces. However, Frank and Jim have pictures on their avatars. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi. How are you both?
Doing
okay.
Doing well.
Hanging
Amazing.
in there.
Okay, so you heard me backstage. You heard me give the big lead up. Number one, there's maybe going to be a brotherly fight later, but that's okay. Number two, can you guys explain your avatars now? Jim, would you like to go first? You're on the bottom there.
Yeah, my avatar, that's just basically where my brother and I grew up. That's our backyard, so to speak. That's Boulevard East, and that's a picture of the New York City skyline. And we lived right across the river from New York City growing up. So
amazing. And you, Frank?
All right. So that is my cat, and his name, and anybody there that's old enough, hopefully watch this show. His name is Special Agent Dale Cooper. We call him Cooper for short.
You dropped out for a moment there. What's his first name?
His name is Special Agent Dale Cooper.
Ta-da! And he's called Coops, and he's gorgeous. So
it's a heavy hitter. That's a 20-pounder right there.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy.
How old is he?
He just turned 9.
Oh, he's good boy. He's lovely.
Yes,
it's a big boy. He's just a moggy though. Is he not, he's not a particular breed, or is he? He
is what is called a tuxedo cat.
Yes, that's his markings.
Right there, straight up tuxedo.
He's very classy, just like you, Frank.
Exactly, all class.
All right, so that's better for me. That's much more personable than just the generic avatars, and I'll take it. Thank you for doing that. It's much more put up here. Appreciate it. So, I guess take it away.
Okay, so where we left off last week, we said we were going to talk about the poems. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do a brief recap of how I received one of the poems and how the other poem came to my knowledge. So Attorney Lee Hill had these poems mailed to him circa 2000, 2001. And as he was getting ready to leave the country, he told me to be on the lookout for a package he was going to send me. And when I received it, in the package contained this poem. And he had mentioned to me that there would be something in there that was something he couldn't figure out, and for me to get it into the right hands. So when I received it, I read it. It was well written, but you know, it's a poem, and the Ramsey case was so big, it could have been written by somebody crazy. I mean, you just don't know. But it mentioned 3 names at the end of it. So I said, I said, okay, I'll just put this aside and I'll, go over it, and, I'll dig around and see if I can. I recognize 2 of the names. One of the names, I had no idea who it was.
Can I just pause you for a moment there? Sarah, if you're there, could you please drop the link in the chat now? That's the the one that's called The Three Men, the poem, if people want to. I'll put it in the description box after the stream has ended. And it is, as I said, also on my community tab. So we're going to go have a look at The Three Men first, if anybody wants to read along with us. Okay, carry on. Sorry, Frank.
Okay, so just to finish up, I got the Three Men poem. That's how I met. That's how I came into touch with Lou Smith. He called me wanting a copy of that poem. That's when I understood it had some importance, and it had to do with the names. The other poem is The Manchurian Doll. That was mailed to author Stephen Singular. And for about a 5-year span, we weren't really working together. We were in occasional contact with each other, but we both assumed we had the same poem. Like we just never seemed to bother to discuss it because we just assumed we had it. So
who would ever think that there would be two poems? Like, it's random, sort of obscure enough to just have one, let alone two.
Exactly. But eventually we came, to the realization that there were actually two different poems. And then I sent Steve mine, and then he brought that to the district attorney in 2008, who I believe was Stan Garnett. We don't really know what they did with the information that Steve gave him, but it is what it is. And then we concentrated on trying to find the poem writer, and about circa 2011 we did. So that's the whole, we'll get back to that at the end, with finding the writer. But for now, we're going to focus on the Three Men poem, because people message me about questions, and it's something you just got to read over and over because they took their time to write it. They were very careful. Almost every word was chosen with purpose. So in these poems, words matter. So you pay attention. A couple of the words, I didn't even know what the hell they meant. I had to look them up. But
Frank, can I just say, in my opinion, words matter in general. Words that you use, words that you don't use. But obviously, to be able to create and craft a poem that it's a beautifully written poem. Both of them are. But to also use the most perfect, appropriate words. Perfect, very, very well written, I would say. So yes, carry on.
Oh, absolutely. So okay, so I'm going to read it again. This time, anybody, Lisa, if you see anybody in the chat that has a question, we can feel free to stop us and we'll go over it. I'll try to answer it. But if you look closely, there's certain names that are hinted to. There's certain events that are hinted to that will come out later when we get farther into the story. So,
can I just is this a spoiler alert? Nick has asked, does they mean that the poems was written by several people? I think you've touched on that before. Long story short, it turns out you worked out it was written by the one person. Yeah, but that's
it was one person. I say they because I don't want to. I'm trying to shield the writer's identity.
A pronoun. A pronoun, not a plural. You're not talking about multiple people. You're talking about a he, she, generic, right?
Correct. All right. So here we go. Okay. So it starts. This is not the author of the original poem. Recidivism is my only concern. You're the only one who has a copy of this. Please respect my anonymity. People who abuse children are terrorists too. In the spirit of Crazy Horse, it's all connected. In his cocky reverie, the truth the three would carry to the steps of the authority to boast of their pernicious spree, but he did not know that I could see and therefore was not wary. For hidden in the rectory, protected by the church decree, he delved in child pornography while elders professed not to see. His sister told them it could be. He killed the child, and honest she, his secret would not bury. And I believe I posted, when I posted this poem online, I also posted next to that stanza, based on true events. So I've received a lot of questions on that. And yeah, it's understandable to have questions. So I'm going to be jumping much further ahead. It's obviously referring to a church. It's obviously referring to somebody who was part of the church, who was involved or had child pornography or was involved with it. And then it mentions his sister told him it could be. He killed the child, and honest she, his secret would not bury. After we go through this poem, we're going to be talking about, we have in our possession a tip line call. And this is part of the case file. This is not, very little case file information is out there in regard to the Ramsey case. There are some interviews, police interviews with the parents, but other than that, there's nothing. Nothing got leaked. They were very tight with this information. They still are. I think it's like over 750,000 pages at this point, and nothing is leaked. So we have the tip line call, and in that tip, when we get to the tip line, I'll be jumping back to the poem to show you, see, this proves that stanza true. And when I get to our church witness and I go through that person's story, I'll be jumping back to the poem saying that person's statement proves this stanza true. So that's why I wrote that in there. The answers are coming. I just want to get through it. They did not know he changed the key when police would come to query, so they broke and entered quietly, though he would claim illicitly, and so avoiding calumny, a grand sum he was paid to flee, and so it was conveniently their questions he would parry. All right, so once again, when we get to it, we will jump back to this stanza, but this refers to an event where the police showed up at St. John's Church at a certain day in 1999, and they found child pornography on the premises belonging to a certain individual who we will get to. It refers to a payoff. We have multiple sources that not only told us that there was a payoff, but they told us the amounts. And one individual actually admitted that they took one of the payouts. Hush money, whatever you want to call it. So that's that stanza. To salve a tale of misconstrue, just look into the Hoffman's pew. That one's an easy one. Hoffman's pew is Mervyn Hoffman Pew. You'll find there in Fort Lumpton Slough, Fort Lumpton, the Pews used to live there. Linda and Mervyn Pew. Linda was Patsy's housekeeper. Mervyn was Linda's husband. Stray cats aplenty skinned a few. On prying stoops, their hides did strew. I believe I addressed this last week. Prying stoops, prying, looking, peering, searching would refer to a detective, and that detective was, or somebody searching for something, which refers to, in this stanza, refers to Detective Thomas. He had a mutilated cat that was actually turned inside out, thrown on his front porch. So he's the prior, and his stoop is his porch, and their hides did strew. Cat's blood will scare daughters too. Daughters refers to Detective Linda Arndt, because she was the one who had blood thrown all over her door. While bushes hid their sins from view, Richard held the cue. Now, so that part of the poem we have proved correct. Those stanzas, they were based on all true events that happened, and we'll explain the connections as we go. The rest of the poem, if the first half of the poem that we could prove correct, that would kind of lead you to believe that maybe the rest of the poem is correct. And if it is, oh boy, but we have not proved the last three stanzas.
Come on, you've had 28 years. No.
Right? 28 years, you figured. The funny thing is, when we first got going at the end of December, I told my brother, once we got the initial information from the librarian and the mechanic. I said, Jim, come on, man, we'll be in and out. We'll solve this in a year.
Yeah.
So I missed it by that much.
That much.
Okay. So the child must die. He did decide. The crime arranged. The ritual applied. With church at stake and family pride, 3 men he chose to end her. Though 2 decried this church a lie, their testimony was denied. With ties that run both deep and wide, no one could defend her. Now some have gone and some have stayed, class to find the roles they played. Someday you'll know the masquerade of Zach, the great pretender. The 3 men, Mervyn Pugh, husband of Linda Hoffman Pugh. And then the second person, member of St. John's Episcopal Church. And then John Rossi, I only know his name. Zach set it up. Dick called the FBI. There are people involved with far more power than Fleet. Fleet being John Ramsey's best friend whose party JonBenét was at the night that she died. So that is that poem. Now, Zach the Great Pretender is an interesting one because I think the poem writer was referring to Zach Prendergast out of Longmont. He received the Parent of the Year award from Congress back in, when was that, 98, Jim? Something like that?
Yeah, about 98.
98. And then it came out that he was a member of the Children of God cult. And that's a very nasty cult. It's banned in several countries. I think Argentina kicked them out. They go under different names since then. The Family, Children of God, there's another couple of names they use. But they believe in sex with children at an extremely young age.
Matter of fact, River Phoenix was part of that. Didn't they grow up in that?
Yeah. Matter of fact, if anybody remembers, River Phoenix gave that interview right before he died. Remember, Jim?
Yeah, I remember.
How old did
he was young, man. He was single digits, right?
Yeah. What was the question the reporter asked? I think it came up about him, about his sexual activity in the cult, and he told the reporter that he lost his virginity at like 9 or 10. So that is that cult. So Congress, he gives the award back to Congress, and then eventually he takes his entire family and flees the country. So over time, his family has come back, his kids, his wife, but Zach has never come back. His name is Zach Prendergast. He stayed overseas. I think that the feds are actually looking for him for whatever crimes, but he's never come back and he won't ever come back. I don't even know if he's still alive. He's somewhere overseas. But that, I believe, is Zach the Great Pretender. Now, John Rossi, it took us a while to learn about this guy.
You want me to go through that, Frank?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out a tie-in. The poem writer. Yeah, Jim, you know what? I'll jump into that later. Go into who John Rossi was and how maybe the poem writer knew of him or knew him.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of a backstory first. So around 2004, there was a guy named Krimsky, and he was sending child pornography via email to a couple, and that couple's name was Alan and Margaret Seeger. This was in Connecticut. Krimsky, he was involved with the Olympic Committee, and Alan Seeger was on the executive board of the Lawyers Without Borders, so they had some prominence. So the Connecticut police basically did an investigation, and it was during their investigation of these emails that were being sent back and forth between Krimskys and the Seegers that they found out that another man was sending Alan Seeger child pornography, and the police identified him as John Rossi from Westminster, Colorado. And these, there were images of very young children. And so the Connecticut police wound up notifying the Colorado police. Now, mind you, Westminster is about 20 minutes from Boulder. Rossi is arrested, but he's given a sweetheart deal by the DA. Go figure. No jail time's given to Rossi. So the question is, Rossi's arrest was in 2005. How did the writer of the Three Men poem back in 2001 know what John Rossi was years before his first arrest? Right?
How did the writer know?
How did the poem writer know that? The poem writer wrote that 3 men were involved in the cover-up of JonBenét Ramsey.
Well,
John Doe at the church, John Rossi, and Mervyn Pugh.
The poem writer says these are the 3 men that were hired, in essence, to kill the girl, or were involved in killing the girl. That's the allegation the poem writer is making. Zach, there's no last name, so I'm just thinking of a prominent Zach that I was aware of before I even received the poem, and Zach Prendergast we knew about very early on. So I'm thinking it could be Zach, because the Children of God would use very young children to blackmail businessmen for money, and they've done this all over the world. So I think that's who the writer is referring to, is Zach. And in the end, Zach set it up. Dick called the FBI, and there are people involved with far more power than Fleet. Dick, it goes, if you go into the, where is that stanza?
Frank, while you're looking that up, I just wanted to bring something up regarding John Rossi.
Go ahead.
Now, at least to my knowledge, but as of a couple of years ago, the Boulder police have never conducted a DNA test on John Rossi.
Well,
it never happened.
He's dead, but
Yeah,
I mean, they could have gotten to relatives, but they, for whatever reason, his DNA, they've never gotten his DNA. He died back in, I forget, he died many years ago. But
Frank, on that note, Nick asked a question. So while you're pausing to answer a question, so is Rossi linked to the church police establishment? Who was he?
Who was Rossi? How was Rossi connected? See, now this is the thing. What we know about Mervyn Pugh, Mervyn did work at the Ramsey home. We know that. That's part of his story. Everybody knows that. We have not found a connection per se between these 3 men. We've been told that there is a connection. The only thing we could find was that all 3 men were handymen. They did handyman work. John Rossi worked for a company, but he was also a handyman. John Doe at the church, a handyman. Mervyn Pugh, a handyman. So they may have known each other through that kind of work. And then I was told from an investigator, not going to mention the investigator's name. If it was Lou, I would just say it. And if it was Ali, I'd just say it because they're not here anymore. I was told that prior to the murder, these 3 men were looked at, they were part of a robbery crew. So when the investigator told me that, I'm like, are you freaking kidding? And he's like, no. I'm like, so they did. So he admitted that they knew each other by saying that. But it's just an investigator telling me stuff on the phone. That's what he alleges. I'm assuming he's an investigator. He's got a hell of a lot more evidence to look at than I do. But these are some of the things that we're told behind the scenes. So the poem writer says there's a link. I got an investigator that says there's a link. So yeah, there's most likely these 3 men knew each other before the murder, at the time of the murder, and afterwards. Any other questions?
There was one other, but I feel like LB. So were the 3 in the poem involved in the actual killing or the cover-up? I think you already answered that.
Yeah, I think my brother may have misspoke and said cover up. They are who the poem writer alleges killed JonBenét. The child must die. He did decide. The crime arranged, the ritual plied. With church at stake and family pride, 3 men he chose to end her. 3 men to end a girl's life. That's what the stanza is referring to. And then it actually mentions the 3 men at the bottom. So yeah, the killing.
Yes.
So, okay. So that is, break. Now there's little things in there. If you look, I can't say it, but like Offman's Pew is a play on Mervyn Pew. And there's the name we can't mention, but if you're clever, it's in the poem. If you're clever, you gotta be real clever, but it's there.
Oh, so I've got 0 chance then, Frank. Okay, fine.
No, you're gonna figure it out real quick. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the Manchurian Doll. This is the one that Steve received from Lee, and that we didn't know Steve had it until 2008. Okay, now this one is not as this one. There's certain stanzas I'm going to read. A lot of the others, it's more of a story, but there are certain stanzas to pay attention to because they do connect to the 3 men one. So
can I remember there, and just for any latecomers, if you would like to read along, Sarah, one of my moderators, has dropped the link to this poem, which can be found on your Twitter. So it's a direct link to this post where Frank tweeted out this poem, The Manchurian Doll, and it's also right now in my community tab on my channel if you'd like to read along if you're a visual person. So carry on, Frank.
Oh, okay. I actually saw somebody in chat mention Bush.
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty good.
It's
actually pretty good because that at the end of one of the stanzas, it says, and cat's blood will scare daughters too, while bushes hid their sins from view, Richard held the cue.
Interesting.
Okay, so those 2 lines, while bushes hid their sins from view, Richard held the cue. Now you could go with the obvious, very literal, bushes on somebody's lawn hiding what they're doing from view. Or you can see it as a Bush's, President Bush. Now, that only caught my eye when I saw it. When we finally got to interview the poem writer, which we did in 2013, sometime around there, this person is extremely well-connected, extremely wealthy. A lot more money than we'll ever see in our lifetime. And when members of a president's family come to your wedding, we're talking that kind of, and so this person with those kind of connections is the one that wrote the 3 Men poem. So just keep that in mind. This isn't some, borderline whack job that lives in an asylum. No, this is an extremely connected, powerful individual that for whatever reason wrote this, thinking, well, in a way, this was their way of thinking they could help and never be found out that they did it, that they wrote it. And unfortunately for them, we figured it out. But okay, so back to the Manchurian Doll. There are certain stanzas in it to pay attention to. One is the second stanza. Of 30 duos, some must know that they themselves will out their crime and have. Okay, 30 duos, right? So
60.
Very good. 30 times 2 is 60.
See.
I knew you were smart. You get it. Okay, so there's the Ramsey party on the 23rd. Anybody that follows the Ramsey case knows that they had their Christmas party on the 23rd. I mean, they say they have a list. We don't even know who attended that party. Too many people. The white party was Christmas Day. And it was the whites, the Ramseys, and the whites' friends from California. Nowhere near 60. But there's another party that was held earlier in the month that not even a lot of Ramsey case followers, they don't really talk about it. Some may not even know about it. And it's called the Foyer Party. And Patsy belonged to St. John's, and they had I'm not going to call them missionary groups per se, but they would break up into small groups and do work in the community. Like, let's say 10 people would form this Foyer group, and their job would be homelessness in the community. Another group of 10 would do a hunger drive. Another 10 would do, donating books, and so on and so forth, doing good works in the community. And every year, all the Foyer groups would come together and have a Christmas party. And it would rotate. Somebody would host. Every year it would be somebody else. In 96, it was Patsy Ramsey's turn. And it was about 60 people at that party. So when they're talking about of 30 duos, some must know that they themselves will out their crime and have. So that is a reference to the church. So what I always do is I take church references from this poem and I just kind of add them to the Three Men poem. What's another good one? All the stanzas are important in a way. They're interesting in a way. Okay, like this one. Doesn't refer to the church, but handlers die, and what to do with Christmas nigh, the one in lieu did air. As I think we talked about in part 1 with Nancy, she claimed that she was abused by members of her own family from a very young age, and that the family had what they called the trainer, and that his name was Mackie Boykin.
Yep.
Mackie was the expert with the garrote. He died in the fall of 96. So, but handlers die. Mackie Boykin was Nancy's handler per se, and what to do. So with Christmas night, with the Christmas season coming up and the parties, the one in lieu did air. So the one they got to replace Mackie with the garrote made a mistake and killed her. Because it's a very fine line when using the garrote. I don't want to go into it again. We did in part 1 what it's used for. So yeah. All right, St. John. Now you can say, oh, that's referring to John Ramsey. St. John would roll over in his grave. So somebody that's dead. St. John, John the Baptist, right, Jim?
Yep.
So it's referring to the church. To know the smut that crossed his nave. Smut, that's an old time word for like illicit material. Nave is the congregation of the church. So that's what that means. Christmas Day, he held her near as if he knew she disappeared that very night. That bottom part of the stanza could refer to John, but the top part is talking about illicit material at St. John's Church within the congregation. An elder cleric's errant son, his extant crush now on the run, did they supply candidates with fodder for their lewd fun? This one
is that E, because if people don't have it in front of them, it's E, the letter E dash fun, which is like as in email, like in the dawn of internet and stuff. Is that what that is?
E-fun, so electronic fun, so stuff maybe put on the internet.
the early years of the internet.
Yeah. What else? I'm just scanning it. So in essence, the church part of this poem, I mean, we put the links in it. You can read it. There's a lot of interesting allegations in this poem where it talks about the coroner being possibly corrupt in this case. But yeah, so we're going to put that to the side for now. So those are the two poems.
Frank,
So,
regarding Ludi Fun, I forgot what Ali's thoughts were of the Orchid case in California.
you want to tell that story? Because Ali was the one that kind of yelled at you when we were in Colorado for bringing it up. This is the story that my brother's going to tell. This is the only time I've ever heard Ali Gray with fear in his voice. He was an old time, very extremely tough dude, and he didn't show fear. He just spoke like just above a grunt, just like a cop. Think about an old cop. That's how he sounded.
Because the Orchid arrest, right? That was in like 97 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. I think it was right around the time of the murder.
Yeah, because
you may want to explain to the viewers what Project Orchid before we continue.
Yeah, Project Orchid was, I believe it was in California, and I'm thinking San Jose. It might have been, but anyway, there were two guys who were basically had a sleepover for one of their daughters and had other friends come over, but they were abusing these children and they were live streaming it. They were basically taking questions or requests from people about how to abuse these kids, and then they were abusing them and showing it live. This was back, like I said, like right at the time of the death of JonBenét or right afterward. And I kind of brought up to Ali that if there was a connection between JonBenét and what was going on with Orchid, and how did something like that take place? And he got very upset when I brought that up. So, I do think there was something to it. If you want to look into something deeper, because Operation Orchid turned into Operation Wonderland.
Yeah, that was bad.
And look up not for the faint of heart. Look up Operation Wonderland if you wanted to see. That turned out to be international.
Use a VPN. Use a VPN.
So, wide-scale terrible abuse of children all over the world. People ranging all walks of life. Rich people, poor people, everybody. There were so many people involved in Wonderland, and it was actually highly sophisticated too, because in order to enter these clubs, you had to have like tens of thousands of images of abused children to get entrance into these clubs. So the guys from Orchid, when they broke them down, that's how the cops were able to penetrate Wonderland. But going back to the Ramsey case, when I brought that up to Ali, he was highly sensitive about it. Like my brother said, he got very uncomfortable, and so I think that might have something to do with the lewd fun in the poem.
Yeah, me too. Because I mean, in the private conversations I was having with Ali, I actually said, I'm like, hey, look, are you telling me that's because he was so uncomfortable on the topic? That's why he hinted it. We had to figure out the hint. He wouldn't even tell us what the hell it was. We had to hint. It was that crazy hint he gave us, and we had to. You're the one that figured it out.
Yeah.
And when we figured it out and we started talking to him, I eventually asked him. I said, hey, are you telling me that they didn't get everybody with Orchid? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, are you telling me that some of them are in Boulder?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, and they connect to the Ramsey case? And he's like, don't know yet. Still working on that part. And then when we went out to Colorado, he didn't want to know nothing. It was like he just wanted us to forget we ever mentioned it. So we didn't push it with him, but we think it may have something to do with Orchid, the Ludi fun. Anyway, so hopefully this is all making sense to everybody. That's it for the poems. So now we're going to continue on our trek.
Can I just pause for a minute? I accidentally touched Charlie Wyman into timeout by mistake. Charlie, that was an accident. I'm so sorry. It was 300 seconds. I think that's not very long. I'm so sorry. Accident. The woes of using my phone. So sorry. Carry on. I was trying to star his comment, and I did the opposite. Anyway, I'm a professional. Carry on.
Sorry, Charlie.
Sorry, Charlie. He had a really good point. I think it might have been, he said that rumors are, like, I genuinely was starring his comment to bring it up to you. I think he said the word is that there is, that there are, rumors are there are photos and or videos of JonBenét, Charlie Wyman. Is that a fact, or is that a thing?
There's always been rumors of that since the beginning. I know when I spoke to Ollie Gray, when I first got in touch with him, he said, him and Lou, well, I know Ollie was, and he was speaking for Lou at the time. And he told me that they believed that there were pictures taken of her murder. They didn't go into specifics with me, but that's what they believed. Now, this is stuff that never made it out into the press and at the time, and they were just trusting me with little stuff. But, Jim, you know what's crazy? We have never talked about John Mark Carr, man.
Yeah, well, we gotta hold on there. Now, Frank, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. When Operation Orchid went down, and then it went into Operation Wonderland, one of the people that was caught up in that sting was from Colorado Springs, right?
No.
Oh,
yeah,
I had the wrong guy.
Yeah, no, it was Fort Collins.
Oh, Fort Collins, that's right.
And this guy wound up killing himself. That's what they said anyway.
Actually, on that note, Nick asked earlier, a little while ago, are any of these deaths of any of these involved people, in your opinion, or in a broader opinion, deemed suspicious at all, or are they all just par for the course in the way life goes and water under the bridge that people just pass away?
Wait, can you repeat that question again?
Basically, go ahead. I'm sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, basically, no, Jim, you go.
Yeah, basically, she's saying, were any deaths in the case, suspicious in nature, or was it just par for the course, just like regular deaths?
Oh, you're talking like the spokesman for Boulder who was killed in Amsterdam, McNeil. I think his name was McNeil, young kid. I think it was some kind of accident with a cab. He died. Nothing, it's just one of those things. And then you had nothing suspicious. You had a reporter from one of the tabloids found dead in a hotel. I remember that made the rounds when it happened. But he died of pneumonia. But
okay.
Nothing suspicious.
Yeah, this isn't going to be like other cases where there's rumors of murders and multiple bodies connect to it. No, this is just the Ramsey case. Any death was just considered it's just natural causes or just accidents. Nothing connected.
It's been almost 30 years, so it makes sense that, and people, that's just how life is. People die.
Exactly. Now, early on, the reporter and McNeil died, I think, within the first 6 months of the case. So, but it was nothing. I found there to be nothing other than just an accident and a guy who died of pneumonia.
Okay.
Now, Frank, I don't know when you want to bring this up, but regarding the poems, when do we want to jump into the tip line call?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna go into that now. We're gonna try to catch everybody up with how we figured it out, the poem writer, and then how Lee got involved, and then after that we'll hit the tip line call. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right. So me, Steve, and a few other individuals start really making an effort to find out who wrote this poem. I think Lou was sick at this time. Lou was always desperate to figure out who wrote it. I think late in 2010, or maybe even early 2011, and it was a mistake on my part. I should have went to this individual earlier. He was a valued source I had always used. He was always on the money with info, and he was deeply connected to Boulder. And for whatever reason, it didn't connect with me to ask him. But at that point, with working with Steve and others on it, I got desperate, and I just said, "All right, let me talk to Stephen Miles, the source that he was my source for like almost 20 years. I think he died a couple of years ago. He was the first person thrown under the bus. I think I mentioned it in episode 1. He was a gay photographer. He had a penchant for, younger men, 18, 19, 20. He actually sued a tabloid. Lee Hill was his attorney in that defamation case. And it was because, and John Ramsey was put under oath in that deposition, and Lee Hill is still to this day the only person to ever get John Ramsey under oath. But
remind people, Lee Hill is an attorney, and if you would like to know more about Lee Hill, there's an amazing article that's in the description box of this and all of the 3 episodes so far. It's an amazing read, and he sounds like an amazing man. So just on that note.
Yeah, Lee is the most interesting man in the world. That's what I call him. He's a fascinating guy. He's led an absolutely amazing life. I mean, shoot, I could have him call in right now and he would. But he's probably, because of the time difference, asleep. But he's just that kind of guy. I mean, he's got an absolutely crazy story to tell, especially when it comes to Ramsey with Nancy, how things fell apart, his dealings with the police department. Incredible. So
I can't believe you tell me that now. We'll get him another time. Frank, you're holding out on me? Good God.
And some people say I have kind of a deep voice. Lee Hill's like the freaking James Earl Jones of attorneys, man. I mean, here's what
he is.
It's crazy deep. But anyway, so I reach out to Stephen Miles, and it was just on a desperation. He was always straight up with me. He was always earnest to find out who killed the girl. He always wanted justice to be done. And Lee set me up with him in 2002. So around late 2010, 2011, I call him and we're talking about the case, and he's asking me what's new. And I'm kind of filling him in with just little stuff. And I said, "Hey, Steve, by the way, man," I said, "we're working on a project." And he's like, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "You think I could help?" I'm like, "I'm hoping you can help. You've helped me with other things." And he's like, "Sure." And I'm like, "You know anything about poems?" And he started stammering. And it was as soon as he started stammering like that, because he was such a easy talking, kind guy. And that's when I knew he was somehow involved. And so I stopped him. I go, "Steve," I go, "whatever you do, man, we've had this great working relationship for so many years. Don't ruin it by lying, man. I can tell you, who did somebody give you the poems?" And he's like, "Yeah, somebody gave me the poems." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "What did you do with them?" And he's like, "I was told to mail them, to take a bus to Denver so there wouldn't be a Boulder postmark," which is what the envelope only had. So they were a little bit clever there. And I'm like, "All right, Steve." I'm like, "I'm going to have to ask you to tell me who." And he was extremely hesitant to do this. But eventually, I mean, he said, "This person's been my friend for a long period of time." And he goes, "What are you going to do with it?" I'm like, "Steve," I'm like, "I can't say that we're not going to reach out because we have to." And he was just worried that it was going to cost him his this decades long friendship with this person. And it did. And I warned him. I said it could end your friendship. I don't know how that person's going to react, because obviously they're going to know you told us. And he told us anyway. So he was willing to risk it for us because we told him it was important. But yeah, Steve, damn, I wish I could have figured this thing out when he was still alive. But anyway, so that's how we came across who the hell the poem writer was. So now we have the person who delivered the poems. Now we have the name of the individual who wrote the poems. So now, at this point, Lewis died. He died in 2010. So I think Steven Singular was the first one to try to contact him. I think he actually showed up in person. They threatened to call the cops on him. So he came back and he's like, well, that didn't work. And I'm like, well, let me call. You know, they literally hung up the phone after 2 seconds. So I tell Steve, I said, well, it didn't work on my end. And he goes, well, that person may never talk. And I'm like, there's got to be a way. They wrote the poems for a reason. So we just got to figure, they wanted to help then. So why don't they help us now? Oh. So I thought about it for a bit and I came up with a plan. This is what I've done over, since 1997, is come up with different plans, different ideas. In the beginning, it was to get close, how to work our way in from the outside to the inside. Different plans that worked, plans that didn't. Certain ideas worked, certain ideas didn't. So I came up with another one. And that was, I reached out to Lee and I called him in Asia. And I told him, I said, remember those poems from all those years, from years back before you left the country? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, we figured out who wrote them. And I told him the story about Steven. And he's like, I'll be damned. And he's like, did you get him to talk? I'm like, no, we're having zero success on that. I go, Steve almost had the cops called on him. So, that's the last thing he wants. I said, I have an idea and I think it'll work, but it's going to require a huge effort on your part. And he's like, sure. I'm like, okay, I need you to take, the soonest that you could do it, the better. Hop on a plane, come halfway around the world, go to Boulder, where technically he was still a wanted man because he was facing certain, misdemeanor charges. And then I need you to knock on that door. And when they answer it, to say, hey, how are you? I'm Lee Hill. And I said, I think the shock of it will catch them so off guard, they'll start talking. That was the plan. The trick was getting Lee to agree to stop what he was doing and come all the way halfway around the world, which he did. Hopped on a plane. When I tell you Lee is tremendous, Lee's a tremendous guy. He hopped on a plane, landed in Boulder. He called me, he goes, I'm in Boulder. I'm like, well, let me know how it goes. He walked up, knocked on the door. Person answered it. He goes, hey, I'm Lee Hill. The person was so stunned, invited him in. The next call I get, he's like, hey, Frank. I'm like, hey, Lee. He's like, yeah, I'm in the poem writer's living room. They're making something to drink right now. Just to let you know, it worked. And he was tape recording, so we have some of that tape recorded. So yeah, so that's how we came across the poem writer. Now, there is an interesting story with Miles going back to when I first met him in 2002. He asked me what my theory of the case was. I told him sex rings, wealthy people, John and Patsy didn't kill her, but they were involved in something that led to the kid's death, and they're covering up for who did it. And he was like, I have somebody I want you to meet. I'm going to introduce you. I'll give them your number. I'm like, absolutely. Calls me back. And this turned out to be one of the strangest interviews I've ever did. And he was like, the person won't talk. I'm like, why not? They're scared because they're afraid that you'll get their number and that you'll put their name out to the tabloids. And, they got kids and they don't want to go through the hassle. I said, that's all right. And so I was like, well, Steve, I'm like, call the person back and see if we can do a game of like telephone. I'll relay my questions to you. You call the person, relay my questions to them. They give you the answer. You relay the answer to me.
The long about.
Yeah, that's the long, but it worked. The person, the person agreed to it. So I asked basic questions. This person was an extremely wealthy person, part of the jet set crew in Boulder. People who can cater to whatever whims they want. This was the group that this person associated with. And then the person had to back away from this group because they started doing things with kids. It was after that statement that Stephen called me back and said, well, that's it. She doesn't want to, they don't want to do this anymore. It's over. And I called that person Mr. X. So I never pursued it after that. I felt bad. I'm like, all right, Mr. X has kids. I don't want to mess with their family, so I'm not going to really pursue it. So I didn't press Steve on it. And then when we found out who the poem writer was, Steve said, hey, Frank, remember that conversation I set you up with years ago, Mr. X? I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's the poem writer, was Mr. X, the whole time. So I had the person giving me answers in 2002. Really, so that was just an interesting Stephen Miles story. So now we got the poem writer to talk. At first, she is, well, okay, enough with the they. It's a she. I can't, I keep on screwing it up at this point. Yeah, it must be like, I think of every time I say it, I'm like, well, that's one, that's two, that's three. At this point, I give up. So she, very nervous that we know that she wrote it. She admits to writing the Manchurian Doll, but she refuses to admit that she wrote the Three Men poem, which is fine, but she did. She can deny it all she wants. She gives herself away in the way she wrote the poems. The words she uses, it's her. Anyway, so she can deny it. She's just worried about legal ramifications for what transpired at the church and what she wrote about, that she could get in trouble down the line. And plus, there's an extreme fear factor with these people. She's terrified of certain people knowing that she's helping. She actually called it, I would love to help you on your quest. She didn't even call it, she called it a quest. But eventually she backed away and she stopped helping us. And there was this multi-year gap between 2013, 2014. I think we got the tip line call when? In 2017?
2017.
Okay. So in 2017, we sent an email from an individual. They had received information. They knew what we thought about the case. And I open up my email and I see it. And it's like, hey, Frank, it looks like you may have been right. Check out this email. And I open it up and it's a tip line call from the Boulder Police Department in 1997. They conducted an interview with somebody that called the tip line. This has never been seen by the American public. Nobody knows this tip line exists except for, well, there was a handful, and now there's all of us that are here right now. The tip line call, it's to one of the commanders. There's a CC to one of the commanders at the Boulder Police Department and the district attorney's office. So everybody knows what's in this tip call, the police and the DA. And it's a detective that was part of the Ramsey case. And that detective's interviewing this individual. And it's a woman who's calling about her brother. And because of what her brother did, I'm sorry. Somebody say something? Oh,
Nope. No, you're good.
Oh, okay. Just my microphone. She's calling to tell the police about her brother and the things that her brother did to her many years earlier. From the her brother was having sexual intercourse with his sister from the ages of 10 or 11 to the age of 18. And she called to relay that to the Boulder Police Department because her brother is a member of St. John's Church. And she thought, and she also said that she was told by her brother that he knew the Ramsey family very well. And she said because of this, she thought the Boulder police would like to know this information in regards to the JonBenét murder. That, in essence, is the tip line call. We also received a summation of events by another detective. And this deals with, it's a summation of the tip line that I just gave you. And it mentions a summary of the Hoverstock interview when they brought him in, and a summation of the brother himself, the main individual who the girl is talking about, her brother, which I'm just going to refer to him as the individual. So the Hoverstock interview, they tell Hoverstock of what they've learned about this individual at the church. And Hoverstock's response is, he is shocked to learn this. He had no idea that this guy was a sexual molester or a pedophile. No clue. He is shocked to hear any of this about this individual. Later on, when we get to the church witness, we're going to be talking about statements that contradict that entirely. And I have no doubt that my witness is solid in her statements, because Hoverstock lied in that interview. He knew the whole time what that individual was, and for whatever reason, he was allowed to stay at the church. They didn't kick him out. So, and that's a problem, because John Ramsey, in his own book, wrote that Reverend Hoverstock, he considered him one of his closest confidants. So remember when I told you in part one that, or maybe mentioned in part two, that, yeah, there's nothing that directly implicates John, like child pornography was, they found it on his computers or anything like that. But I said, you're judged by the company you keep. So now you have Randy Simons, the photographer that he hired, was a pedophile, arrested in 2018, Randy Simons. That was JonBenét's photographer. He was a pedophile. Then you have Fleet White, one of John's best friends, accused of being a pedophile and involved in a sex ring in California. Now you got his closest confidant, Hoverstock, lying to the cops in an investigation into John's murder, into John's daughter's murder. So 2 people connected to pedophilia, and then 1 person covering for a pedophile. This isn't a coincidence.
Friends like that, who needs enemies, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's, once again, you're judged by the company you keep. I mean, even Santa, Bill McReynolds, he was a mess. There were stories. He had another close child friend that died, that was murdered several years earlier. And then in 1974, about 20 years before the murder of JonBenét, his daughter and a friend are abducted. The daughter, Bill's daughter, is not molested, but Bill's daughter is forced to watch the molestation of the other girl. And then both girls are returned safely. That doesn't work like that. In for those into true crime, we know how those cases turn out, but not in that case. Bill's daughter's kidnapped, forced to watch another girl be sexually abused, and then both girls are safely returned to their families. No arrest ever made. That's like Santa Bill's history right there. So it's just strangeness all around JonBenét Ramsey were these people. Anyway, so yes.
Someone asked a while ago, but let me see. I think it might have been friend of the channel, Charlie Wyman, who gets timed out just because I'm a little bit lacking in proficiency. What did he ask? He asked, can you ask, yes, it was Charlie. Great questions tonight, Charlie. Ask Frank to tell us about the FBI search on Fleet White.
The FBI search on Fleet White. FBI?
Was there some sort of search on Fleet White?
Frank, that might be alluding to Stephen Singular's friend.
Oh, yeah. It's
an ancillary story, but
this is an ancillary story going back, early on in the case. I received a settlement. I got hurt at work, and I received a small settlement. I lost my career at UPS, so I had, the small amount of cash. I'm like, all right, let me hire a private investigator. This one with connections, and in my neck of the woods, there's a million of them. So I met the guy, and how it works is you tell them what you want, they give you a price, you pay them up front, and then 2 days later they say, oh yeah, we're making some headway, but we're going to need another $1,500, and then you give them that, and then several days later you get the information it's just like, it's almost like a scam in a way, because they get the information quick. But I gave the guy, the private investigator, the name of Fleet White, and he goes, who's Fleet White? And I'm like, you follow the Ramsey case at all? He's the friend of the father. I need his entire history. He's missing about 10 years that no police officer can find. He has this huge gap in his history, and I'm just trying to see maybe if I can locate it, or have you figure it out. And he goes, sure, all right. And he goes, well, this is how private detectives work. You're going to give me $1,500, and then I'm going to find everything you want. And don't you worry. It will never come back to you. That's why we're doing it this way, because, you're paying me this money. I take any heat for you, the client. You're going to be invisible. And I'm like, great. I go, not that I really care, but here you go. Call me when you find out something. A couple days later, just like, I just said, hey, we're making some headway, but I'm going to need another, $2,000. It came out like I gave the guy like $4,000 or something like that. And I said, yeah, no problem. Met up again. There was always a Burger King for whatever reason. Give him the money. He goes back. All right, I'll call you. And a few days later, he calls me, and I'm like, hey, okay, so what'd you find? And he's like, I need you to meet me at the Burger King. And he was very serious, and that kind of professionalism, that hokey kind of slick salesman thing was gone. Yeah. And it was just like, it was like, I just need you to meet me there. It was like just kind of a very, a seriousness to his voice. I'm like, all right. I was just assuming he wanted more money. I just thought maybe he was in a bad mood. So I meet him there. And he comes in, sits next to me, and he goes, here. And he gives me all my money back.
Which never happens.
Which, if anybody who's ever worked with private investigators, once you pay that money's gone. There's no like, you don't like what we found, here's your refund. That's not the way it works. That money's spent. You kiss it goodbye. So the fact that he gave it to me, I'm like, what the hell, man? And he was like, hey, look. He goes, remember when I told you that I would take all the heat and you would be invisible and nothing would come back to you? And I said, yeah. He goes, no, it's going to come back on you, and you need to stop what you're doing and you need to walk away from this. He goes, so I'm giving you your money back. Count it out. It's all there. I'm like, what the hell did you find? He goes, I pulled the sheet in this guy. He goes, all I'm saying is, and he didn't tell me what he found. He just told me that he did the work, and whatever he found scared the daylights out of him. And he's like, we're done. This is your last warning. Back away from this, because it will come back on you. Here's your money, and we never met. And that was my experience. Just hiring a private investigator to look into Fleet White. And that was what I got.
That's wild.
Now, even Singular also had a friend that was had a similar story as well.
Yeah, Steve. So on the other side, of the country, Steve's doing his thing, and he had a friend at the Justice Department. So like I said, we didn't work together. We were just kind of on the same wavelength at times, So he called his friend and he said, hey, can you do me a favor? Sure. Can you type Fleet's name into your computer database and see what comes up? Whatever came up, Steve, the way Steve told it was funny. He goes, my friend typed it in and he literally ran away from his cubicle screaming and told Steve to forget about it, forget about him, and to leave this alone. So whatever information's coming up on this guy, you don't have a gap in time like that. You don't have a private investigator react like that. You don't have somebody at the Justice Department react to something that they're seeing on the screen about an individual, which leads, I've always thought, to two. Well, actually, there's only one conclusion: that this guy worked for the government in some capacity at some point. What capacity he worked in, I have no idea. Was he part of an intelligence operation? I have no idea. But did he work for the feds at some point? No idea. I just know that he was connected to the government at some point, because people don't react like that. So those are the and we have a bunch of ancillary stories like that.
Yes, I love it. Have you ever over the years, particularly within that experience, been scared for your own personal safety, either of you?
Nope. Not the only time it ever crossed my mind was when Lee Hill's life was falling apart. And I was sending Lee money to help him out. I was sending him money when Nancy was there and he was doing the investigation, just so we could, I knew he wouldn't be able to take on any other cases. So I was sending him money to help pay like bills, just regular bills. And at that point, I was talking to a lot of bad people in the town, trying to get information on people in the town. So there were bad people. I think I actually mentioned it to you, how I did things back then. What did Steve refer to it as, Jim?
What's that?
The tactics we would use.
Oh, like strong arming, you mean?
No, not strong. Stephen got mad one time.
No, not the strong arming.
Steve got mad at one time because I was doing something with Ali and he took blowback for it. That wasn't we didn't think it would happen, but it did. And he got pissed off and he was like, hey man, he goes, you and your brother, you're like cowboys, He goes, I'm a writer. We have journalistic ethics we have to follow. The cops have rules to follow, but I always told Steve, I'm like, hey man, we don't have to follow ethics. We're not writers. We're not cops. We can take this as far as we want to take it ethically. And in the beginning, I used to bend it a lot. I don't want to use certain words, so we'll just say leverage is important early on. If you get information about somebody and they're not connected, but they may have names that you may need, you can go to that person and say, I know about this. I know about you. And I need a name that you have. So unless you want my focus to be you, And there's this whole thing. People have a fear of the unknown, and there's this. So I was using multiple aliases.
No, and it's true. People, when you call up and you start talking about somebody's history that they're unaware of, that anybody knows, and you start reciting that to them, it's unnerving.
It's powerful,
and you can use it for your advantage.
Because then people, if these guys know that about me, what else do they know about me?
Just imagine, like, anybody out there, or you, Lisa, just think of somebody calling you up one day and saying, I know the worst thing you ever did that you never told anybody. And
the thing is, so that wouldn't work for me. But yes, I have channeled. So, but yes, I understand your point.
Right. But, you're a little bit different. But yeah, for most people, they've kept it a secret for so long, and then they get a phone call out of nowhere about an event that maybe happened a long time ago. And it is just unnerving. And you put them to a choice. Make a decision now. You have this phone call to do it, or else, A, or else B. And that's how we got our way in early on. So, and then, we did some other things that maybe were a little ethically challenged along the way. And Steven would always get pissed off. And then, he said, he goes, you guys, this is why we can't associate with you. You and your heavy-handed tactics. I'll never forget that phrase, heavy-handed. But once we got in, we kind of put that to the wayside, because now we were with Lou and we were with Ollie. So now we had to kind of behave. We couldn't go crazy like we were doing. But then near the end, we almost got the okay from Ollie to go a little crazy, because we had a plan in place before he died. But that's down the line. That could be for another show. But anyway, I know we're getting totally off topic here. Okay, so
the good stuff, like obviously your investigation and all that it revealed over the years is so important and intriguing and fascinating. But this stuff puts meat on the bones. Well,
there's so many of those stories, but if I kept telling those types of stories, we'd never get, we'd never talk, with the rest of the outline I wrote, we'd never get to it.
Can I, on that note, because Charlie, and I really feel like I owe Charlie a lot right here because of that accidental timeout. He did ask a while ago, but he's asked again. Ask them in all caps, which I'm a massive fan of. Love 1010. Ask them about the librarian at the college. Can you speak to that?
No, I cannot. Thanks, Charlie.
Oh,
I am not. I let that go. I received information from somebody at the college in reference to John. I could not substantiate it, and I don't doubt what the person told me is true. He was actually quite nonchalant about it. Didn't think of it as a big deal. I did, but he didn't. But I'm not going to go into it because I never could find another piece, another person to kind of, to back up what this person was saying. So I had to just leave it be. It is what it is, but I'm not going to go into that though. But thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. I think Charlie knows what's what. Anyway, yes. Yes. Okay. So carry on.
I think I know who Charlie is.
Yeah, so do I.
And his name is not Charlie. So be a good boy. I know what you're doing. Don't get slick. All right.
Do I need to time Charlie again, but on purpose this time?
No. Okay. So, let's get back on topic here because we are straying terribly.
Yeah, we are in left field right now. We need to get back.
Okay, so to bring us back, we've talked to the poem writer. The poem writer has admitted to writing the Manchurian Doll, not to writing the Three Men, but I pretty much know that she did. She's just scared of getting into trouble, and she's scared and fears other people. So she backs away. And there was a lull in the case for 3 years. I mean, not lull in the case, a lull with her for about 3 years. She disappeared. During that time, we received a tip line call, which we were going over. And then the summary from one of the detectives that talked about Hoverstock. And then it summarizes the interview with the individual themselves is brought in for questioning. They ask him, where were you? You know, the old, it's just like the movies. So where were you when the murder happened? And technically, it's not even an alibi. He didn't even have one. He said he was home sleeping with the wife. Using a spouse is not considered an alibi or a legitimate alibi to any detective. Sleeping is not considered an alibi, but that was his alibi. And he did say one very strange thing. They asked him a very strange question at the end of the summary. And the detective said, what do you think should happen to the killer of JonBenét if caught?
The old justice question. That's a good one in interrogations. Yes, carry on.
And he said, well, I think they should be forgiven. That was his response. So I've talked to other investigators since then that still work this case, all ex-homicide and homicide investigators, and they look back on that and they say there's no way they should have let him go. They should never let him leave out the room because it's not an alibi. So now we're caught up. That's the tip line call in the summary. And now about 2017, 2018, we get the poem writer to talk again, to meet. And once again, it takes Lee coming from Asia to make this happen. Gets her to talk again. She's on board. They have a meeting. Lee's calling me with names that they're hearing she wouldn't let him make phone calls during the meeting. And I interviewed her in 2014, but I'm looking over my 2014 notes and my interviews with her. And I'm listening to what she's saying to them now. And I'm like, Lee, she's lying to you. She's mentioning things, she's trying to throw other people under the bus for writing the Three Men poem. But she mentioned the name in 2014 that I didn't really pay much attention to until she mentioned it again in a certain context. So I wrote that name down from Lee. And then, the interview ended out in Colorado. Lee left. And the poem writer is just in the wind. Probably will never talk with any of us ever again. It's just not going to help. But that's okay. Not too concerned, because don't need the poem writer if we have the witness to the events that the poem writer wrote about. Then who cares about poems? So I took that name and I called my brother and I say, Jim, we need to contact somebody in this person's family to set us up with this individual. This individual is going to be referred to as the church witness. And Jim, take it away how, that phone call went.
I wound up getting in touch with the church witness's daughter. Pleasant phone call. She was interested in why I was touching base with her. But then when I told her why I was calling and regarding the individual, the John Doe at the church, she was like, it's about time somebody started looking into this, on what happened with this guy. So she wound up giving us the contact information to her mom, who was the church witness, and then we took it from there.
Yeah. So my brother handled that. Oh, what was the line? What was the line that the daughter said to you when you told them who you were? You would when she asked you who you were calling about, and you mentioned we're looking into this individual.
Yeah, she said so. She said it was about time.
Oh yeah, about time. So, and this is in 2018, 2019, right before COVID. Gosh. About time. So nobody, not the cops, not reporters, not people that followed the case, nobody ever thought to reach out to this. Now, in their defense, they didn't have the name. We did. Nobody really had the poems, but other people had the poems too. They just couldn't figure it out. They couldn't get the poem writer to talk, and we did. So I called the mother of this girl, and she was extremely, extremely nervous, and she was talking about this individual at the church. This individual that she's talking about is the one the tip line caller was talking about in 1997 to the Boulder police, saying, allegations of incest, from the age of 10 to 18. The same person. And she would tell the story and how he was beloved at the church. Everybody loved him. He was like a monk, kind of. And everybody was just amazed by him. She couldn't get over how much everybody loved him. And she told me she joined the church in 92. And then I started asking questions about maybe some, about events that may have happened. And she was very hesitant to say it, but I finally got it out of her about her finding child pornography on church grounds belonging to the individual that's in the tip line call. We're going to refer to that person as the individual. She found child pornography that belonged to this individual in his possessions. And it was then she started getting really scared because I think I mentioned JonBenét Ramsey, and then I shouldn't have did that. I don't know why I did at the time. But she got kind of freaked out, and she kind of ended the call, and it ended okay. And I said, okay, we can just pick it up at another time. She was like, yeah. So I told my brother, I'm like, we're going to have to give this woman like months because she was rattled. Once she thought that JonBenét could have been a part, like the individual may have been a part of killing her, really flipped her out. A few days go by. I'm sitting at home. I'm watching a college football game. I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm just relaxing in bed by myself. And I get a call and I see it's a Boulder number. And I go, hey. And she's like, Frank? I'm like, yep. And she's like, it's me, the church witness. I'm like, oh, church witness. How are you? I'm shocked that you're calling me. And she's like, yeah, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just sitting here watching the college football game, relaxing. What are you doing? And she's like, well, I'm out with my family on a beautiful mountainside area. We're having a picnic. And I'm like, oh, great. Good for you. And she's like, this is how it all happened. And she just laid everything out. Like, I don't know. She thought about it, and then she was just at a place that she just felt at peace, and she just decided to call me and unburden herself of all of it. No more nerves. She answered the questions that I asked, but it was pretty much her telling the story. And she joined in 1992. She said that the individual, when I asked a question about the individual's sister, and she was curious as to how I knew that the individual had a sister. I'm like, because I have a tip line call to the Boulder Police Department where she made allegations against her brother. And she's like, yeah, that sister went to the church to complain about her brother and her brother working there between the years 1992 and 1994.
Yeah.
Now that's
before, yep.
So that's years before the murder of JonBenét Ramsey. And she was specific in saying she went to Hoverstock and told him, John Ramsey's closest confidant, the person who told the Boulder police in his interview that I knew nothing that he was. No, he knew between the years 1992 and 1994 that this guy was a pedophile because the sister went to him to warn him about about this guy. Nothing is done. So she, then the murder happens in 96. The church is rattled, all the church members, because, it's John and Patsy's daughter that's murdered. They're church members. So it's all of that. In 1998, she befriends this individual at the church, somebody she admired, that everybody admired. And then out of nowhere, this individual starts telling her about these fantasies that he's having about girls within the, inside the church, young girls, very young. He starts showing her incest writings that he's writing, just about, raping sisters and all this, just gross stuff, artwork, incest related. And she's trying to talk to him, and she's like, what you're doing is a sin. But he doesn't stop. He just gets worse with it, constantly harassing her about this stuff. She then goes to the church leadership and to Hoverstock and says, hey, we got a big problem with this guy. He's telling me that he's fantasizing about girls in this church, having sexual fantasies about them. He's writing all this stuff about incest. You guys got to do something. She is dismissed. Hoverstock looked at her and said, go light a candle. That's an exact quote from my church witness. So 1999 comes, and my church witness discovers child pornography belonged to Brian Perry.
Yeah, this individual.
Deleted.
This individual.
Son of a bitch.
Oh, I don't think anyone heard it. It's like
This individual. This individual.
Once again, we would just like to state for the record that these are all allegations.
Yes, this individual. But keep going. And the threat though is the reason why why we're trying to be careful is the litigation in this case is real. I mean, it's like you can get sued all day long. You have to be extremely careful, because there have been several people that have been sued. It's not a pretty thing, so just be warned. So just this individual.
I was having a damn good time too.
That's okay. This individual.
This destroyed it.
That's okay.
Anyway.
You're all right. It's all this speculation and pure speculation, no facts. And we did state that at the very beginning of the series, and I probably should have stated it again, that unless anybody's been prosecuted to the full extent of the law and found guilty, it's just all speculation, and we're good.
Okay, go ahead. Just continue, Frank, where you left.
Tell Nick, thanks, Nick. We appreciate it. When we get sued to oblivion, send us a cardboard box.
That's okay. Keep going.
Oh man, I just lost my freaking total train of thought.
Not Hoverstock. Knew, lied.
Yeah. Anyway, allegedly, the church witness makes strictly allegations about finding child pornography on church grounds, allegedly belonging to the
individual.
The Boulder police are called. They allegedly removed child pornography from the church, and they allegedly remove the individual from the church. But they do not arrest said individual. The vestry members, that is the church leadership, decide to have a meeting to discuss what they are going to do with this individual. So they have, they have the meeting. The individual is present at this leadership meeting. And they ask the individual to leave the church. The individual says no, and then proceeds to allegedly blackmail the church. And the individual allegedly is paid off. There's monies paid to other individuals. And then the individual leaves. The Boulder police and the district attorney's office, this search is not known to the public. And everything was covered with Ramsey, but not this search. This search never received public knowledge. They buried it. It's like this. So nobody knows about it. Not your most avid Ramsey follower does not know this case. It does not know that this search happened. It did. And it happened in 1999, allegedly. Yeah, see, it's freaking brutal, man. It could have. That's all I had to do was get through that last part.
That's okay. Just keep going.
That is freaking brutal, man.
Do you know what though? Everybody's already forgotten. If we hadn't said anything, it wouldn't have even been noteworthy. But as I've said to you before, like libel and defamation and stuff and slander, people generally only pursue that stuff in the civil court system when they're absolutely confident that they're 100% innocent. And obviously, allegedly, speculation. I think you're good.
Well,
just keep going.
And this is why we've never done this live. Damn it. I made the same mistake on True Crime Garage, but it was edited. Yeah. Same point, too. Damn it.
That's okay. Keep going, dude.
It's all good.
Anyway, so, I mean, that's where it's at, That's where it's at. The Boulder police did not make an arrest, even though child pornography was allegedly found. And the individual was allegedly paid a large sum of money. Go back to the Three Men poem. What does it say? For a grand sum, and so avoiding calumny, a grand sum he was paid to flee. So the writer of the poem is writing about that event that allegedly happened to my church witness, because my church witness is allegedly the person that found the alleged child pornography, because that's all I'm going to say is the word allegedly. And the Boulder police, they make no arrest. Nobody knows a search even happened at the church. And he was able to leave town with a boatload of cash, allegedly. And that's where we're at. And yes, see, it was going good. See, when you get rattled like this, I had a whole train of thought. I just went out the window where I was going to go with everything.
But that's okay, though. It is what it is.
But everybody now is pretty much caught up to everything. So
you know what though, this is it's interesting to see then the dynamic of you two peeking behind the curtain a little bit of the investigators to see how Jim is I'm speculating here, the more calm, soothing, and Frank, you're a bit more of a firecracker, am I right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, also a lot of this, my brother, like I'll give you an example. My brother speaks a lot. I'm pretty much like the silent partner in this. My brother, lived and experienced, a lot of these events. Like, for example, the poems. I was not even around at the time when he was breaking down the poems. I was in a full-time ministry in Tennessee, not actively involved in the case at that point in time. So my brother talks a lot about this stuff because some of this stuff it was his own experience. So like I was involved early on in the case up to probably early 2000s, and then came back in probably like around 2009 or something like that.
Yeah, I think you came back. Like, I remember when you said that you had to like step away, and I'm like, damn it, man.
Yeah, I had to step away from it and was in full-time ministry. And
maybe around the time, that we made the break with the poem writer, around 2010, 2011.
Yeah, something like that.
So and people comment sometimes, oh, you don't let your brother speak. What do you want me to do? He wasn't around for 10 years. So I have to tell 10 years of a story where my brother wasn't involved. So he can't tell it. Only I can tell it.
I was involved for like the first 5 years, then a 10-year break, just about, and then another 14 years.
Oh man, this could have.
That's all right. It's okay. Just keep going.
We good. Like seriously, we good. You're good. You've done an amazing job. Been what 6 hours in total, almost of you really having to fly by the seat of your pants, and you've done an amazing job, and you continue to do amazing jobs. So
yeah.
I mean, if there's any other questions or.
Yeah, I'm sure there's questions. Here we go. Let me see. Oh, Nikki asked earlier, Jim, we needed to know what you were eating before when your door creaked and we heard you go in and out and do whatever you were doing.
I was eating, believe it or not, a package of Twizzlers.
Twizzlers?
Yeah.
What do you ate?
Hey, man, it's Friday night snack, man. Twizzlers.
Oh, let me get out my Charms Blow Pop. Twizzlers. Freaking guy. Hey, see, this is what I'm aggravated now because we're put in a situation where this whole case and the stuff behind it and why a lot of people don't know certain information is that everybody was forced to keep secrets. With Ali, was and others non-disclosure agreements, right? We were always just giving the information we were digging up to Ali, to Lou, passing along some to Steve, in hopes that, all right, if this doesn't help Ali and Lou solve it, maybe Steve can make a break on his end and, tie things together and figure it out and release it his way, write a book, whatever. And I always vowed, I said, I'm never keeping secrets. I vowed, I said, I ain't going down like Ali, being, so sad at the end, like we were with him in 2017 or it was 2016, we were with him. And he was just so sad because there was information he couldn't get out. And that's what we were working on, was figuring out a way to get some of the information that he knew out to reporters and stuff. And we had a plan in place.
Calling a no-show at work. Someone who'd jack up costs for seniors. Dead wrong.
Jim, what the hell are you doing, man?
What are we doing there, Jim? It's 1 minute Twizzlers, next minute ads.
Jim is
old. I hit the remote on accident. I sat on it and it popped up and took the mute off.
See what happens when you eat Twizzlers during an interview? All hell breaks loose. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's another question here from Nick. He asks, so what about the Boulder community? Surely they want justice for their community and want these bastards brought to justice. Has there been pressure to investigate further?
That's actually a good question.
It's actually the exact opposite. The Boulder community, look at it this way. That entire congregation knows what happened. All right? They know what happened. They know that an alleged allegations against an individual of being a pedophile was allegedly paid a huge sum of money to go to another community. You didn't warn the people in the community that you had a monster coming your way. They know. And they just get pissed off at us when we call them up. I've tried to find other people other than the church witness. They won't go on record, they won't talk about it, but they don't deny it. They just say things like, well, that's in the past. Or, yeah, we don't like to think about it anymore. What are you talking about? So, if the pathology holds true and the allegations are true, everything's an allegation. The pathology will say that this guy went on a freaking crazy spree with that money in a new community when nobody knew what he was when he got there. People like that don't stop. They don't. That's just how it is. And that congregation of that church don't care that they did what they did. They're keeping it a secret to this day. We only know about it because somebody got cute and wrote a poem. We were just able to figure it out. And through the poem writer, thankfully, the church witness was good enough to like just spill it. But nobody else will own up to it.
I'm sure like your common people in Boulder would want justice in the case, but I know the power structure doesn't want it, because why would the Boulder police keep the search of the church a secret? Why would the the authorities, the Boulder police and the DA's office for that matter, keep quiet what was found there? Why was no arrest made? So once again, you go back to that Stephen Singular quote. When a town tries to protect itself, the truth becomes obscured.
Mm.
I'm looking at a question from Melissa.
Yes, I thought this is very timely because, Frank, you just sent me that article about this new, just released a few days ago, Melissa McCarthy being Patsy Ramsey. Tell us. Take it away. Did they consult you, Jim and Frank?
No. And I would laugh in their face if they asked. They could offer me a boatload of money, and I would just laugh at them, because you're doing a mini series with actors playing John and Patsy, well-known actors. This is going to be a pro-Ramsey movie, and how the Boulder police wronged them, district attorney. It's the same nonsense that they've been putting out about this case for going on 28 years. Absolute drivel. I don't care how well it's acted, how well it's written. It's going to be. I'm not going to watch it. Why bother? Even though I like Clive Owen, I think he's a fantastic actor. He'll probably do a great job as John Ramsey. But do you think they're going to talk about what we're talking about? That's the whole point, is that this is the stuff they want you to focus on. Most of the stuff that we've been telling you, you never heard about the case. We're giving you the real deal about Boulder, what Boulder was like, and it's never been reported by anybody. There's been documentaries about this case. I don't know how many books. This may be the second or third miniseries. I mean, you guys with Karen Reed, you guys were all excited with 20. I mean, it's like I'm watching this stuff with Karen Reed happen, and I'm like, it just brings me back to the Ramsey. I mean, it was on every show. Every show did Ramsey for years and years and years, nonstop, for at least 4 to 5 years. And then it slowed down, but then it still continues. And almost 28 years later, they're doing another thing. And it's absolute drivel, just like the rest of the stuff. Nobody did their job. The media was totally a huge part of the problem. They failed at their job to investigate this. Because how could we be finding this stuff out? We live in New Jersey. So you're telling me, the cops, many cops have written a book. Steve Thomas, who, by the way, was in charge of the church aspect of the investigation. Just saying.
LB, does Boulder still have the same issues? Is it your understanding that nothing's really changed in Boulder?
I think somebody asked me that question in a direct message, and I answered them. In a way, it's changed, and in a way, it hasn't. So, do I think that they're tougher on crime now? Yes. The DA. I think there's been a change in policy with the district attorney, and I think they're tougher on crimes against children. Pedophile crimes. I think they're much tougher on it. So there's that. But Boulder ain't never going to change. It's a sick, twisted, perverted town. I remember having a talk with Ali one time, and this is maybe 2005 or so. And I was just learning all this crazy stuff. And I think it was with that attorney in town. Hold on one second. No, but I'm live giving the interview. Oh, okay. That was my wife asking me a question. So I'm talking with Ollie, and I was just disgusted with what I was learning and how open it was. You know, just like the attorney we talked about in part 1 and part 2, where I had the, victims, and he was throwing sex parties with underage kids for 20 years. Everybody knew. All the cops knew. Everybody in the DA's office knew. It was an open secret with this guy. So, like, that part of Boulder has not changed. There's still a bunch of freaks there. And Jim, when did we talk to that kid?
Dimitri.
Oh, you didn't have to say his name, but
Well,
yeah.
It's a first name. It doesn't matter. Dimitri.
You could have said, like, when did we talk to Mike or something?
Dimitri. There's no last name. That's what I know him as, Dimitri.
Okay. Yeah, so we got tipped off to a guy that was part of a underground sex club in Boulder that had been going on for years. He knew about it because he was a person who would attend it. And he got kind of sick of it because they started to use underage girls, the young girls and, freshmen, sophomores. But it was even worse. There was there was a pipeline between businesses in Boulder where some of the girls were attending, and they would be groomed there subtly. And that when they turned high school age, they'd be kicked to these sex clubs, and they would just join. And the next thing you know, they're part of this Boulder sex underground, 400 members. And they would do these shows. And it was an agreement between everybody involved that, no cops were ever called. There's no limit on violence to the things done to the people involved. They agreed to it. And he went on to describe acts that he saw that I don't even want to repeat it. I mean, we're talking sick, violent acts. And I was like, and you attended this? He goes, yeah. He goes, I was into it then. He goes, but then, the kids started getting younger. Mm. And he had a girl that worked there who was part of it. And that was like 2018. And so what's changed? It's just gone underground, maybe more. Maybe they don't, like the attorney that threw the sex parties all those years ago. Maybe it's not as open as he was about it. Maybe it's gone underground more high tech, definitely more computerized, definitely more high tech. There's drugs involved. There's prostitution. I mean, he knew everything. He knew about the systems on their computer, how they ran their business. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, while the DA changed, the culture there with the people that live there hasn't. So that's your answer.
For you that kind of, I've put it up on, this is just, Ellie said, I've heard similar stories from Salt Lake City. Utah also seems to be a very corrupt swamp. My question to you is, almost 3 decades of investigating this and uncovering all sorts of things within the Boulder region, hence the Boulder syndrome, which is what you've coined this over the years. Have people come to you with information about things in other states and regions along the same lines, or have you been so highly focused on the Boulder syndrome that you haven't really had the headspace or the bandwidth for that?
Jim?
Well, I mean, over the years, there's been some cases that we've looked at and that I've looked at. There was even a case in Maine that was had some similar parallels to police corruption, police involvement. As a matter of fact, one of the people that one of the perpetrators was a police officer who was abusing kids, and then that turned out that the police chief was also abusing kids in the precinct, and other cops. It was this like huge cop scandal of abusing kids in some small town in Maine. I started looking into that a little bit and got in touch with some of the victims, but you can only look at so much of this stuff at once, and like how you put it's pretty good. Like you only have so much bandwidth to start investigating in different areas all over, so you can only look at so much, and pretty much primarily just kind of stuck with the Ramsey case and maybe looking at some other things from the peripheral standpoint, but not getting too deep.
We got in Utah County pretty deep, pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, that was briefly. We did get into the Utah case for a little bit, but even then, you can't follow that all the way through because you could spend years doing that.
Yeah, that case. I'm sorry.
No, you. Okay.
Yeah, for anybody that wants to go look. Oh, a couple of things. Anybody out there that thinks we're like crazy, Steve wrote about us. So you can read Steven Singular's book. I think it's on Amazon. Presumed Guilty, written by author Steven Singular. He actually wrote a chapter about me and my brother. He didn't ask us. We had no idea. He just said he was writing a book, and we were like, "Hey, great! He's going to update it." I'm like, "Hey, great! About time." And then he told us, "Yeah, it came out." He goes, "You guys are in it." And he gave he talked about the poems and stuff, just a lot of stuff that wasn't in the 99 version. But, Steve, Boulder was considered at one point, I forget what year it was, the #1 place to live in the United States. It really is beautiful. I mean, I didn't go to Boulder when we were out there in 2016. We were in Colorado Springs. But, man, it is fantastic. It's gorgeous country. Just to be surrounded by those mountains is stunning. But yeah, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to live if you want a good chance of your kid being molested. If you want to up the odds of that happening, well, it wasn't. Maybe not so much now, but definitely back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Yeah, you can move there. I would never step foot. That's why I didn't step foot in the town. I didn't want to. I didn't want to grace it with my presence.
Until years and years later. But it's probably better off that we didn't, because Lou said especially, when you wanted to go out there, Lou said you probably, the questions that we were asking early on, you may not have come back.
Yeah, I mean, that's a talk. I think, I don't know if you talked about that in part 1. Yeah. He warned me. It's.
Yeah. So, Adam asked, and I know you sort of touched on this. Well, you more touched on how you became involved in this case and investigating it. And I know we've spoken offline, Frank, about sort of when you were calling this a pitch, because generally what you've done in the past, other than your 3-part crime garage, you have mostly pitched to more official bodies and organizations. Is that right? Could you tell the people a little bit about where you've sort of delivered presentations and pitched this Boulder syndrome around the world?
I pitched to networks. One network. I don't want to name it. I don't want to name the network, but everybody would know it if I said it. It's a cable network. It's not 247, but it's a big cable network. And they were working on a Ramsey show, and it was, same old drivel. But their producers had heard information from somebody, and they were using their expert on the Ramsey case. Their expert, who I knew, and we don't like each other, and that's okay. But when they asked her, the expert, about these names, she had no answer to give them. So she said, "You may want to talk to this guy." And she gave my name. So I had these people from this network call me, and they tell me they're in Colorado shooting. And I'm like, "Are you doing the same old stupid nonsense that everybody else is doing?" And I'm like, because what I tell you, and then I went on like for an hour, and they had an FBI guy there who was vetting all the information to the best of his ability. So I went on and they were asking me, well, who is this guy? And I'm like, oh, this guy. He was the city attorney. Oh, who's this guy? Oh, this guy was an attorney having sex ring parties for years. And just different names that they had no idea because their expert couldn't tell them. Only I could. So then I went on to explain the sex ring theory and then the Boulder syndrome to them. And what I was told was what their FBI guy said, of all the witnesses, not witnesses, of all the people that you've talked to in putting this show together, the person with the most credible information is that guy from Jersey. So that got me an invite to the network. So I said, look, I just did a presentation not too long ago in Colorado. Just give me, it doesn't have, that was 6 hours long. It doesn't have to be that long. I can, cut it down. I can cut a lot of things out. We'll just get to the meat of it, maybe 2.5, 3 hours. Just give me a whiteboard and the time, and I'll set you guys straight. You won't waste your money. So I go in there, and the one producer from the network that I was dealing with, who was a real arrogant freaking guy, man. Oh. What did he used to say?
Methinks not.
Methinks when I asked him to put me in touch with the FBI guy he was using, the line he gave me back was, "Methinks not." He was that kind of ass, and I had to deal with this dude. So he comes down, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm dealing with this freaking guy. This is, I'm like, "Hey, how are you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, you got 30 to 40 minutes, and we're gonna do it right here." We're in essence in a waiting room in the lobby. I'm sitting on like this awkward chair. I got a stack of notes that I printed out so I could do this presentation. I'm like, "You're joking, right?" And he's like, "Nah, man." He goes, "This is a business here. Don't you know who we are? This is blankety blank." I'm like, "Oh, here we go." And then the executive producer comes down. I didn't know he was going to be there. And then a couple of other bigwigs come down. So they're this producer's boss. And I can just see the change in the power dynamic. So this ass is no longer running the show. It's these guys who I'm presenting to. And they're in suits and they're polite. But now I learned what happens when you pitch at a network. So I spoke. They gave me 40 minutes. They let me speak for 2 hours.
Oh.
When I learned I wasn't going to have a whiteboard, I just threw all the notes on the floor. And I said, okay, I'll do it off the top of my head. And I went in order. And how they do it, you say something, maybe you speak for 10 seconds. Next thing you know, you get a line of questions thrown at you harshly. They're just trying to see, if they can rattle you. Answered all of them, continued speaking, and so it was like that for 2 hours. And then one of the executive producers actually came up to me and shook my hand, and he goes, "That was pretty freaking impressive that you know that off the top of your head, no notes." And I'm like, "Well, I was promised a whiteboard and a few hours. So what was I going to do with all these notes? I had to discard it. I just forget about it and go off the top of my head." I said, "Well, I don't care how impressed you are with the presentation. What's going to happen?" And he's like, "Well, we brought you in here to hear what you had. And it's a lot. And it sounds pretty good." He goes, "But we already shot everything and it's already in the can."
Oh.
So I said, "So you brought me out here for what? Why am I in New York City on the East Side, which is horrible? Why did I lose a day's pay to come here?" And he was like, "Well, we just wanted to see if there was any extra information." I'm like, "But what are you going to do with it?" So And that's usually how the networks run. I've done stuff with NBC News, and that ended up with me threatening the reporter. That didn't go well. People would know the name if I mentioned the name, but I made him a promise. I said, if and when I ever solve this case, I'm going to fly out there to your house. I'm going to ring your doorbell, and I'm going to slap you right in the mouth. I'm not even going to punch you. I'm just going to slap you.
There's that strong arming again.
There it is.
Well, that was a strong arm. That was just like a threat because he was calling, he was fine. And I was like all excited for the interview. And then halfway through, he starts calling me insane. I'm like, what are you talking about? Insane. I know John Ramsey. I've looked him in the eye. I'm like, so what? So what? I believe they didn't kill their kid, just like you. But that's where it ends. Ever since they got exonerated by Mary Keenan in 2006, well, her version of an exoneration where she apologized to the Ramseys for all the trouble they went through. And they think of Mary Keenan as the hero. She's not the hero. She's a villain. She was part of the freaking problem in Boulder for decades. She was the one making the plea bargains. In the Ballard case, she was the lead prosecutor. She signed off on that plea bargain. She's not no hero. She's a villain. Oh, aggravating. So the NBC thing didn't work out too well.
NBC, there we go.
Yeah, NBC. But I will keep that promise. I'm a Christian man. I don't want to hit the guy for no reason, but that one I'm going to keep. Anyway, so
other than a few, I guess a handful of pitches to media outlets, and the True Crime Garage podcast, and then now here with me and my family here. How have you managed, if all that you've learned through your investigation over these 28 years, how have you managed to not outlet that in some way?
Well, I mean, part of it was we were keeping things a secret. That's what happens with this case. I vowed not to keep secrets, and then I'm keeping secrets. I have these poems. Lou says they're important. What am I going to do with them? Share them with the public? Oh, by all means. I get those messages a lot. I get that question a lot. Give us the names of all these people. Well, one, there's legal issues. So right off the bat. And two, like the church witness, for example. How come I'm not going to give you her name? Because she wouldn't be a witness much longer if her name got on the internet.
Yeah, and that's the thing to kind of stress.
Twitter will never be successful at that.
Yeah, in order to build sources, man, you have to build trust and you have to make a bond. And if you know that, like, if you know someone was just gonna spill your secrets and you were just gonna proclaim it to the world, and and you weren't trying to protect them, like old journalists used to do, protect their sources. That's how you're able to get inroads into cases. That's how you're able to get sources to give you other sources and to get even deeper by being protective and being secure with the information that you receive, and don't just blabber it out all over the place. It takes a long time to do that.
Yeah, we would never have learned about Boulder if we burned our sources. You can't. That's when you out them, when you put their name on the internet, you're outing them, you're burning them. Part of it is you got to promise them that you're never going to tell anybody anything. That's how you learn. And I'm only doing this now because we are at the end of the line.
This is the end game here.
This is the end game for us. We were not supposed to be. This is not our forte. Anybody that listens to us, you can. We're not professionals at this. We're learning. I'm learning a lot about documentaries and producing as I go, as we work with different people to get the story out. We're now about getting the story about what we know out, because it's the end of keeping secrets. I don't want to go out like Ali went out, sad, upset. I'm already one heart attack in. I don't really, in case I do shuffle off this mortal coil, I don't want to go out carrying the secrets of this church and what they did. And, allegedly. So, that, but we're not experts at it. So we have to learn how to, we've dealt with a lot of reporters.
Reporters, forget about
I got a notebook full of reporters' names that I've dealt with in the hundreds in this case. Never mind producers, editors.
And the
authors.
fascinating thing with the reporters, Frank, you'll agree to this, is that 9 out of 10 of them that, there were hundreds of them that we've contacted. Almost all of them in the beginning are fascinated and they want to learn more, and they're ready to bust the big story about the Ramsey case. And you start giving them the information. But the thing is, they don't want to do the work. You give them information and you need them to dig further. They won't do it.
The thing is that it's not that they don't want to do the work. They don't know how to do it. Gary,
there you go.
In my talks with Gary Webb during that several year stretch, he would tell me, and he was right. He was like the last of the great, investigative journalists. He said it. He goes, investigative journalism in this country is dead. It's dead. And what's happening to me is proving it, that it's dead. And maybe Michael Hastings, you can look up that name, Hastings. He did a story on generals in the military, CIA, and he cost some people their jobs, and he was working on another story, and then his car blew up as he was driving it. And that was the end of it. He could have been the next great one. Greenwald is pretty good, but like breaking stories like this,
they don't
know how to do it. I mean, Googling is not investigative. You're not being an investigator by throwing a name into Google. It's about building sources.
Jim, what are we having now?
I'm putting the Twizzlers away.
Wow. Damn, man, how many Twizzlers did you eat?
No, it's just like one here, one there.
Oh,
it sounds like eating the whole pack, bro.
No, it's a pack, but I got to open it up and tears, and you got to pull one out.
Now be honest. Okay, you pulled one out. How many did you eat? How many more? It's more than one. I know that.
No, I'd say about 5.
5 Twizzlers.
Yeah.
Freaking guy.
There's a question on the screen from Rochelle. Did the Zell brothers run across the name Christine Marcy in their investigation?
Christine Marcy. No, that's a new one. I hope Rochelle, I hope she connects to something, because I don't know that name. Does Christine have information?
Christine. Well, does Rochelle have information?
Rochelle. Yeah. So, and then the other big thing we did was I mentioned it briefly. We went out to Colorado in 2016. There was this whole thing with Ollie. I mean, it could actually be like an entire another show. The story in 2013, I don't know, Ollie found out information, whatever. Something freaked him out, and he told me and Lee that we had X amount of time to find funding for a parallel investigation involving Ollie, Lee, me and my brother, other reporters. And if we weren't able to secure the funds, he was going to burn everything he had. So me and Lee got to work. First, we started with one reporter, then his wife got sick. Then we went to another reporter, a very good reporter, who said it was too big, that we were onto something, but it was too big for him to do, and that we should go a different route. Ollie said no, we were going to go with newspaper articles with information, and it was going to be written over a several week period. But we had to secure $250,000. So eventually a foundation in Colorado agreed to listen to us, and it went off of Ollie's reputation. So Ollie backed his reputation on this. And we went out there, and the thing was none of the reporters were gonna pitch this, and they're the professionals. Lee wasn't gonna pitch it, and he's an attorney and a wordsmith. Ollie wasn't gonna be pitch it. I had to pitch it, me and my brother, and I had to create the pitch. So I think we discussed this before. I mean, offline about fun things. This would probably be like the most fun it was, and it was nothing fun about it, but it was an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
It took me several weeks because I was so stressed about this pitch. Like, this is the end of the road. This is it for us. As we're either going to get this money or we're not. We're pitching to a CEO or a COO of a company. They shut the whole company down for the day we were there and kicked everybody out of the office because the person we were speaking to knew of this world. This is what this foundation did, but overseas. So Ollie had to vet the people at this organization. They had to vet Ollie, and that went back and forth. And eventually it got set for 2016. The stress of it, I was down to my high school weight by the time I got out there. I didn't eat for weeks. I was so stressed out, didn't sleep, didn't eat. So I was like down to like 150 pounds.
What?
Yeah, it was when Lee saw me, he's like, man, you ain't going to make it. You can't, you're not going to make it. And I'm like, I'll make it, man. I was just stressed out about the pitch. I gave the pitch. I took a train out because one, I don't really like to fly. And two, I wasn't done with the pitch. So I needed more time. So I said, let me take a train. I always wanted to take a train across the country. So I did. And I practiced it. I practiced it on a cab full of train riders between Chicago and Denver. They all loved it. Got like a standing ovation from the train cab when I was done. That's when I knew. I'm like, okay. I had people saying, oh, we're going to see this on TV someday. And we're like, well, hopefully someday. But right now we need this money to get to the bottom of things. And we spoke at this foundation for, I think when Lee interrupted me with a question, I was already 3 hours in. And Lee said, we may want to stop for lunch. And I'm like, why? He goes, because you spoke nonstop for 3 hours. So let's have some lunch. And then we spoke for another 3 hours. And then we got a yes. They said yes. Ollie was so happy. He was making calls to publishers, and I never seen him sound so hopeful. He had a big smile on his face. And then he said something when we would, I'll tell, well, Ollie's gone. I'll tell this story. We were about to go into the hotel in Colorado Springs. And Ollie was in the back seat. And just remember who Ollie is. He's a country known, private investigator, well known in intelligence, in intelligence circles, tremendous contacts across the globe, a really impressive guy. And he was John Ramsey's private investigator, one of his private investigators. And when he got out, he looked at me and my brother and he said, I think John played a role in the murder of his, in the death of his child. And it took him years to get him to say it. But, after all the stuff we were giving him and the stuff he was finding out on his own, which is why I think he wanted to go this route, but he couldn't trust the Boulder Police Department, couldn't trust the Colorado Sheriff's Office. So it was just this ragtag team that was going to work with Ollie headquartering it from Colorado Springs. Everybody had a role. Me and my brother's roles were going to be the lightning rods. We were the ones, when the news articles were going to come out, we were the ones going to be causing chaos in the town, going door to door, letting people know about what information we have, trying to cause as much angst and panic among people that we could. But Ali was nervous. So first thing, Ali didn't want my brother. And I was like, Ali, man, I'm like, that's not going to happen. I said, one, we're a team. We've been doing this for years. We're a team. I said, even if I agreed, my brother wouldn't agree. He's still going to come out because I'm doing it. And he's like, I don't want anybody with kids. And I said, well, my brother's a no-go. And I didn't tell my brother till after. And Ali made me swear, man, I didn't know what he was going to do. But Ali had a plan to get rid of my brother, which was kind of funny. Somebody was going to give my brother the Nancy Kerrigan treatment.
No, here we go.
And bop him on the knee, so he couldn't help out. He would have to leave. But anyway, yeah.
So was that?
I'm sorry.
He asked, didn't trust? Like Ali was? Did he just want to keep the circle small? Why not want Jim there? I feel like Jim's a pretty cool guy.
Oh, Jim's, like my brother's the witness whisperer. There is no person he can't get to talk. It's a gift from God. People that I won't even think of calling, my brother call him up, get him to talk. Like he's that good at it. It's a gift. He's got the knack. I mean, Ali knows, but Ali just didn't want my brother there because my brother had kids. And I think the way Ali said that, he goes, it would be a 50%. It's a 50% risk that one or more of the people that come and work on this will not be coming home. So that's why he didn't want anybody with kids, because you're dealing with corrupt police, corrupt businessmen, that have things to protect. We didn't even go into those stories, but it's all right. And
there's a lot of stories, man.
Yeah, and
there's almost too many.
Yes, Ali wanted everybody to have a life insurance policy. When my wife found out about that, when I told her when it was over, she was not happy.
No.
So everybody had to have one. There was a lot, and then there were things already put in play with the Boulder police. Ali had certain information on certain cops. Yeah, but Ali died 2017. So we get the yes from the presentation. We're all excited. Now we got to come up with a business plan. Ali's locked into NDA. He can't have his handprints on it. So I'm the one that has to come up with the business plan. Do I sound like I'm a business guy? To come up with a detailed business plan? Like I have like logistics. Yeah, my idea of logistics for this is get me and my brother to Colorado. I don't know. You're talking about how much computers cost and setting and rent. So I'm like, I was doing all this crazy stuff, trying to get this business plan together. And then the board of directors got involved from the foundation. They got wind of it. Not all of them were happy with this. So it wound up being a split with the board of directors. And eventually that split turned into a no. So it went from a yes to a no by the end of 2016. So now we got to start all over again. So Lee finds another foundation, same thing. They agreed to $100,000. We were in the process of securing in another place with another $100,000 when Ali died. And yeah, and that pretty much sank that plan because Ali was going to be the lead. He was the head guy. He was the general. But, once again, we're doing this because nobody else did their freaking job. Cops didn't do their job because they were either dirty or they were cowards and turned a blind eye to a paycheck when they knew stuff was wrong. They, just say, oh, okay, as long as I just play ball and I won't say nothing and I'll keep being a cop and I'll get paid and I'll just turn a blind eye to pedophilia. It happens. Again, I bring up Patrick for the Karen recruit, Patrick Rose in Boston. That's exactly what they did. You had internal affair cops. They sustained the allegations. He should have been fired immediately. He wasn't even suspended. Nothing happened to him. He didn't lose rank, nothing. And they covered for him. So IA was involved in covering for him. Supervisors, people at City Hall, commissioners, they all knew. And he went on. And the funny thing is, the initial allegation was from a boy. When they covered for him, now he knew he was totally protected. He went back, found the boy, and raped him again. Because where are you going to go if you're the boy? Who are you going to go to? There's nowhere for you to run to because the cops are in on it. And they protected him all the way up till he became the head of the police union. It's amazing that happened. I was fascinated. I'm like, that is a great example. And it happened in Boulder. People knew that certain people were doing things with kids and don't make waves. Turn a blind eye. You know, maybe your superiors say, oh, you want to arrest this guy? We're telling you not to and just to let it go. Now, if you have any character and you're a cop, and you know, it's just like with my job. If I went to my job tomorrow and I saw that there were pedophiles doing stuff and I had a superior tell me, hey, Frank, don't go to the cops. Don't alert the authority. Just turn a blind eye to it and you can keep on doing your job. No, I would contact the proper authorities. I'd quit my job and I'd find another one. It's not your birthright to be a cop. Do the right thing. You know, like the line from The Departed, the world needs plenty of bartenders. You could have did that or any other job. But no, they turn a blind eye to it. And that's, to me, that's the epitome of cowardice. Aggravates me to no end. Anyway.
Seem to have lost Jim, so maybe the Twizzlers really did him in, and he's now in a sugar coma. But and it's getting late for you, so I thought maybe, do you think we might be able to catch Lee Hill one day?
Oh, Lee would be, you know, he would do it, but it would take a little while to set up because not only, you know, time difference with you, there's a time difference with him.
He's in Asia.
Asia, yeah. So I think he may be. You know what? You guys may be closer in time now that I think about it. I think he's 10 or 11 hours ahead of me, if I remember right. Something like that. So he's
like an hour or two ahead of me, perhaps, or behind me. Well, let's talk offline and maybe see if we can set the ball rolling there, because I do think he sounds like a fascinating man.
He is.
Yeah. And possibly next week, Frank and I are going to talk a little bit deeper about not so much the facts of the Boulder syndrome and the investigation and what it's uncovered, but perhaps go into some of the negative aspects of the obsession that's sort of taken over your life with this.
Well, I can speak to that. That'll probably be more like therapy. That would be a good thing. Yeah, I have no problem doing that. I can speak to that. Many different examples of how it can just, you don't even know what's happening until you're too far in. And then you're just obsessed. It consumes you.
Yes.
And your desire to know the truth consequences don't matter anymore. So it's like you'll do whatever it takes. The only thing that saved me from getting into real trouble with this case was the distance. That's what saved me. If this case would have been in Jersey, forget it. I would have been in a ton of trouble or hurt or something worse. Yeah, it would not have gone well because I wouldn't have stopped and it would have been just too dangerous. Yeah, it was the distance that saved me from really getting myself in a big jam.
Well, let's save that for a poll. Look, Jim's back. Yes, let me put him back. He's obviously, the Twizzlers are oh wait, ran from studio, kicked from studio. What? There he is. Add to stage. Hi, Jim. You had a sugar coma, but you're back, yeah?
I'm back.
Okay,
just
you're gonna close it out, Jim. I told her 20 minutes. You're gonna speak, so hit it.
We're closing it out.
it's late for you guys.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said it's late for you guys, and I really, everybody, myself included, absolutely thoroughly appreciates you all being here for 2.5 hours now. It's flown by for me. You two, you Zell brothers are quite the intrigue, and what you've uncovered over the years has been mind blowing, to say the least. Um, have you got any final words, Jim?
Well, we're just trying to get this information out. We want to point people in the direction of the church. Hopefully, this information can, we can get more of this information out there, and hopefully, at some point, maybe there can be some pressure put on the authorities in Boulder. I thought something might have been happening when the new police chief took over in Boulder, and they kind of disciplined some of the detectives that were in Boulder for not properly researching and investigating cases properly. Some were demoted, some were reassigned. So I was maybe some pressure will be eventually put on the Boulder's police and DA's office, where they can start looking at some of this new information and do a proper investigation of what really went on.
Sorry, I just paused there. I forgot to mention it before. Nick suggested that. Have you ever thought of contacting Joe Rogan this could be right up his alley in terms of,
I have contacted every media person in the country, it seems, over the last close to 28 years, or going on 28 years. I've contacted everybody. Anybody I thought that would listen, help, sent emails. I had one guy in London. I was dealing with that producer, but the interviews, how they wanted to do it, it didn't mesh. So that fell through. But yeah, a matter of fact, I think I sent Joe Rogan something. But like I'm telling you, it's not easy. When you first, Joe Rogan probably thinks of the JonBenét Ramsey case just like everybody else thinks of it. Parents did it, or an intruder did it. The first 2 minutes of speaking to, even the people at, True Crime Garage, he admitted to us after the fact that after our first phone call, he said, I thought these guys were batshit crazy. And
so there you go. I straight away, maybe we can work on a few more people again. How long ago since you did the rounds of sending out that kind of inquiry to media and YouTube people?
I've done it. See, now YouTube people, it's different, because there's like a genre that, like the sex ring phenomenon, it didn't really pick up in this country. Like I've been doing this since 1990. So I was doing this 5 years prior to Ramsey, and just diving into all different other cases, and some ritualistic cases like the Utah County case that's possibly still ongoing. I don't know. But I'm starting to lose my train of thought here.
That's all right. It's very late. Look, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Frank. Have you got any final thoughts, or we'll let your brain rest?
Yep.
Hey, go ahead, Jim. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, with our interview on the True Crime Garage, we gave an email, and it's just to collect tips, or if anybody has any information to pass along to us. It's jbrtips@gmail.com. jbrtips@gmail.com. And we didn't think that would really be that fruitful, but we actually got good information from somebody from that area, from Colorado, who was able to get us in touch with somebody from St. John's. So
if anybody out there, listening to this knows somebody or knows something about what we're talking about in Colorado, in Boulder, St. John's, send us an email at jbrtips@gmail.com.
Or you can always reach out to us on Twitter. I'm Frank Z 2137 on Twitter. You can reach out to me that way. And Jim, what are you?
In the Zeller.
In the Zeller.
We've been dropping your links in the chat throughout.
Thank you.
So, yes, no, you're welcome. Of course, I'll put that email address into the description box of all 3 episodes if you like. So
Sure.
That's there as well. I'll just confirm it with you off air, Frank. All right. Well, thank you so much. You guys go, and I don't know how Jim's going to sleep with all that sugar in his system, but we shall see.
It's only 5 Twizzlers, y'all. Don't be worried.
Just wait. After the show, he's going to hit the jelly beans.
I tell you what I'm hitting. I'm hitting the sack.
Yeah, right.
That's what I'm doing.
And on that note, thank you so much, guys. I will talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening / sleep.
Hey, Lisa, we appreciate you having us on, and thank you so much for doing 3 parts. We know you're busy doing other things, especially with Karen Reed. So we appreciate you spending Fridays with us, the last 3 Fridays. Thank you for everybody listening, and being patient as we tell our story. And I don't know, Lisa, if there's a way that you could kind of hit the delete button on that name somewhere, I don't know what kind of technology you can master.
Leave it with me. I'll see whether my friend and moderator Adam can help me with that in some way. We'll see. Is there another one to come? We will not necessarily do another. I think you've pretty much done the 3-parter, which is everything, the information part, yes. But we will be back, whether it's sort of Frank and or Jim with other adjacent stories, whether we can get Lee Hill, if there's any developments in that. We might even do a watch party for the Melissa McCarthy and whatever his name is, Clive Owen thing, and poor Frank may well have a coronary, another one. So
I can't watch that. I mean, if you guys are gonna have a watch party, I'll be forced to watch it, and I can call out all the nonsense.
Yes, we might do that. Put that in park that one for a couple of years when it's finally made and out there. All right. Thank you so much, Frank. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Lisa. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. There you go, shorties. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your amazing questions. Again, Charlie, I'm so sorry for accidentally timing you out. Not intentional. Nikki, I'd watch that too. Nick, I'm not ready to lose Frank and Jim from my life. Honestly, none of us are. I will do everything to prolong. In fact, I mentioned to Frank earlier about next Friday and just talking to him probably solo about the whole obsession thing, and he actually replied back and he said, you're not going to lose us. We will, if there's anything that happens, we will always, we have this professional relationship now where we will always be talking about this, and we can cover all sorts of things. So there's a whole bunch of documents and links in the description box. I'll add a few more things in. There's an article about the Melissa McCarthy, Clive Owen special, whatever, made for TV movie, whatever it is. I'll put in their email address, and make sure you hit the like. I know all the Quite Frankly's have already hit the like, and I'm sure everybody has, but drop a comment after the stream is ended. If you could, please share it around with people, spread the word. And I'd like to thank my beautiful moderators, Sarah, who's been here tonight, Nick, I think Kat was in and out, Adam, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Did I forget anybody? Oh, of course, Jess was here a bit too. So I appreciate you guys all being here. I know it was a long one, and Friday night, so bless. Oh, yes. Great questions, great stream. Thank you. Catch you on the next one. Oh, well, tomorrow night I'm doing a guest appearance, tomorrow day, 11 a.m. on a channel called Dear Woke Christian. I know, off-brand, but they this channel has been covering the YSL Young Slug Life, Jeffrey Williams, Thug case, and has no understanding of the Karen Reed case at all. So I'm going in there to give a 45-minute, hour catch up speed. So at 11 a.m. tomorrow, I'll pop it on my socials and share it on my channel, on my community page. But love you to come and support me there if you could, shorties. Thank you all, Twizzlers. Twizzlers are life, apparently. Thanks, Nikki. Peace. I love your faces. Bye.